Hello, this is Julian with Coffee Reviews, and today we'll be reviewing the Kahuhia wash-processed Kenya from Single O Coffee. And there's the cup right there. And Single O, originally based out of Surrey Hills, Australia, and I'm currently at a park near the Chuo City location here in Tokyo, Japan. And this is my first time ever trying this coffee roaster, as they're one I'd never heard of before this trip, but one that's come highly recommended from a number of local baristas. Once I did find out it is an Australian-based coffee roaster, then I definitely wanted to review it, as we have such an awesome Australian following that I enjoy reviewing any Australian coffee roaster any opportunity I get. Now, the notes about the coffee shop itself. So one thing I found very interesting was it didn't actually list the origins or the processing methods for the coffee on their offerings, but I could kind of tell which one was which based off the notes that they had for them. I just thought that was a little different and interesting. In addition to that, they didn't have a drip offering, but all of their current coffees were available as a hand brew. So this one was made with the V60, and it's the one that appealed to me the most, mostly because I haven't had too many Kenyan coffees during this trip. I think we've reviewed one previously, but I do enjoy trying out Coffee Roasters Kenyan coffees because it's one of those where if you really impress me, then I'm definitely a little bit more likely to try some of your other coffees. Let's go ahead and give this one a shot. And the other note I wanted to add about this coffee is the roast profile, because I have heard from people in the past that Australian coffee roasters aren't necessarily the lightest roasting out there. And that was demonstrated within this coffee, as it wasn't quite as light as a number of the ones that we have reviewed in this series up to this point. It had a slight bit more development than the majority of them. Even then, it's not necessarily an overly developed coffee, just a little bit more than some of the lighter profiled coffees we've reviewed in this series up to this point. With that out of the way, let's go ahead and start discussing this coffee, as this one right here offered so many of the classic Kenyan attributes that I was expecting from it right at the start. At the forefront were plenty of those classic Kenyan tart berry aspects, which is something that I go back to a lot. A fair bit of savoriness as well, and what I really noticed and what was the best quality about this coffee was the cool down itself, as it offered more of the candied attributes. We've discussed the roasting machine that all of these coffee roasters are using a lot, but I'm not entirely sure which one this coffee roaster is using, though it also has some candied aspects, which continues to be in line with so many of my experiences. It really seems like Japan focuses and prioritizes the sweetness of a lot of their coffees, as this one may not necessarily be quite as sweet as some of the other ones, but even then, it did offer a nice bit of sweetness relative to the experiences I've had from so many Kenyan coffees. All right, let's go ahead and put up the tasting wheel so you can see what we're getting. And of course, got my notes right here, so let's take a look. And we have 3 level 4s. Let's go through those real quick, and we'll start with the finish. Level 4, yes, not surprising whatsoever, as I often say that it'd be extremely surprising if a Kenyan coffee doesn't at minimum reach that level 4 mark, as it has a very long-lasting and lingering Kenyan savory tart berry components to it. Unmistakable, unmistakable. It's definitely there, present and prominent throughout. Acidity, level 4. Yes, again, it would be very surprising if a Kenyan coffee does not reach that mark, especially something like this, as this one has plenty of those Kenyan bright aspects to it as well, which people seek from Kenyan coffees. Berry fruit, level 4. Yes, first most noticeable and most distinct thing from this coffee throughout the entirety, as this one right here had those classic Kenyan tart berry aspects. They list cranberries on here, so I was fully expecting that right from the onset, and it's very much in line with that. We have a handful of level 3s. We will start with the sweetness level 3. Yes, though it does improve a lot with the cooldown. So when I originally made this tasting wheel, it was a little after it had been brewed, and at that time I would say it was sweet, but I was still hoping for a little bit more, and giving a lot of Kenyan coffees those level 4 sweet notes always kind of tricky. So this one right here, on the higher side of level 3, improves a lot as it does cool down in that sense. Florality, level 3. Yes, plenty of those herbal, floral aspects that I often describe as hibiscus. That is also quite present and prominent throughout this one. Spice, level 3. That's gone down since this coffee has cooled down, though there was a pretty notable spice-like quality to this one right after it had been brewed, so that's why that scored as high as it did. Citrus fruit, level 3. Yes, oftentimes that can accompany the other attributes within Kenyan coffees, so I was experiencing a little bit of that more citric quality in terms of the brightness from this coffee. Stone fruit, level 3. Yes, the other note they have listed on here is the plum, and I would say that that's the more caramelized and candied aspect within this one. Maybe not necessarily caramelized, but candied at least, as there was a bright and sweet stone fruit quality to it in the more dark sense. Then the savoriness level 3, yes, there's a fair bit of the classic T-word tomato-like characteristics within this one, though it's not quite as bad in the cooldown. I could probably tone that down to a level 2, but I still think that at the very least it probably deserves to be the low side of that level 3 mark. Body level 3, that's one that was kind of interesting because I toyed between that as well as the savoriness. Savoriness, I'm like, is between a 2 and a 3. Body as well was between a 2 and a 3, as it didn't necessarily have as much body as I might have been expecting for a Kenyan coffee. And that might be one thing that slightly sets it apart from other Kenyan coffees. And then two other things worth discussing. Before we discuss the cleanliness, I'll actually discuss the smokiness to this one real quick, because that's something I did play around with the 2 and the 3. Right after I had tried it, I was definitely thinking 3, but as it's cooled down, once again, this coffee just improved dramatically upon the cooldown. I definitely decided on a 2 being significantly better in terms of the placement on this tasting wheel. Whereas earlier I'm like, it could justify a 3, but I think the smokiness has kind of cooled down since this coffee's cooled down. Last thing worth discussing, cleanliness, level 3. Yes, that's pretty standard for me. I rarely score Kenyan coffees at that level 4 mark unless they have an extremely defined profile with little to no savory aspects to them. So that was right in line with the expectations, but as I'm looking at this tasting wheel, I do think it's a pretty good representation of what I was getting from this coffee. All right, so my overall thoughts and impressions of this coffee, it was fine. I mean, this is a classic Kenyan coffee for me, not necessarily my type, offering a little bit too much of those tart berry aspects, those Kenyan components to it, most specifically the brightness, which isn't necessarily my favorite, nor the tomato-like quality to it, nor the savoriness and the slight smoky quality. But what I really want to give them credit for is just how much this coffee has improved with time, because I don't necessarily have anything negative to say about this coffee. I just feel like it wasn't necessarily my type of coffee. A lot of people know that I don't like these more traditional Kenyans. I do like them to maybe have a little bit more sweetness, maybe skew in a little bit different of a direction. But this one right here is traditional Kenyan, right down to the expectations you would have for it. So that leads to the type of person I would suggest this coffee to. You're a traditional Kenyan drinker, as it offers so many of those classic tart berry aspects to it. I feel like a broken record when I repeat these sort of reviews, because I just wish there were some Kenyans that may be a little different out there from something like this. But this is your standard expectation. I feel like if you see a Kenyan on the menu and you order this, then you won't be disappointed with what you got. I'm just looking for something, I guess, a little different and unique when it comes to these coffees. But it reached exactly the expectations I had for it, so don't necessarily have anything negative to say in that regard, and I think that's the best way I can leave this review. If you've by chance had an opportunity to try this one or anything else from Singolo, I'd love to know your thoughts and impressions of it, or them as well. If you're enjoying the content, give this video a like, subscribe if you're not already subscribed. This right here has been a review of the Kahuhia wash processed Kenya from Singolo Coffee. Thank you for watching.